Hey Reddit, long-time lurker, first-time poster. I never thought I'd be that guy writing here, but life has a way of throwing curveballs straight into your gut. I, 42M, have been married to my wife, 39F, for 12 years, together for 15. We weren't perfect, but I always thought we were solid. We have the kind of history where you think, yeah, this is the person I'm going to grow old with. But over the last few months, things have started to feel off. Little things at first. She started guarding her phone like it was made of gold, keeping it face down on the table, snatching it up the second it buzzed. She suddenly became obsessed with girls' nights out, which used to be maybe once every few months, but now it was practically a weekly ritual, and she'd come home way later than before. Tipsy, sometimes cranky, and snapping at me over nothing. I kept telling myself not to be paranoid. Everyone online says if you look for red flags too hard, you'll see them everywhere. But deep down, something in my gut was already screaming at me. It started small enough that I could brush it off. She'd suddenly get text messages late at night, and when I'd casually ask, "Who's texting this late?" she'd roll her eyes and say something like, "It's just Karen. You don't know her, relax." If I pushed, she'd snap, "God, why are you so controlling? Can't I have friends?" She also started dressing up more for these so-called girls' nights. And I don't mean just putting on some makeup. I mean dresses and heels she hadn't touched in years, perfume I didn't even know she still had. And yet, when I'd tell her she looked amazing and ask why she never dressed like that for our date nights, she'd bite back with, "Maybe if you planned something worth dressing up for, I would." That stung. I told myself maybe she was just going through some midlife confidence thing, trying to feel young again, and I should be supportive. But every time she brushed me off, every lie that sounded just a little too convenient, it piled up in the back of my mind like bricks. I didn't have proof yet, but the nagging thought was there. Something's going on. The real crack in the facade came one Saturday night. She was supposedly out with her girls again, and I was home watching a movie. Around 11:30, I get a text from my buddy Mark. He's downtown grabbing drinks with some coworkers. He goes, "Hey man, just saw your wife at the Cove. Didn't know you were here too." Except, I wasn't there. My stomach dropped. I texted him back, "What do you mean you saw her?" He responds with, "Yeah, she was at the bar, didn't see the friends though. She was talking to some guy." Now, Mark isn't the type to stir drama, so my heart started pounding. I called her right then. She didn't pick up. Called again, straight to voicemail. About 20 minutes later, she finally calls me back, all annoyed, slurring a bit. "What? I'm with the girls? Can you not blow up my phone?" I asked her point blank where she was. She instantly snaps, "Ugh. At Melissa's house, we just got back from dinner. Why are you being so paranoid?" Except, I already knew she wasn't at Melissa's. That was the first time I knew she was lying. After that night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. My brain went into detective mode even though I hated myself for it. I started noticing patterns. She'd always forget to charge her phone after these girls' nights. So by morning her battery was dead and I couldn't see her location. She suddenly had a password on her phone when she never cared before. And the lies. God, the lies. She'd say she was at Melissa's again. But then when I casually asked Melissa's husband about it, he'd look confused and say, no, she wasn't here last night." When I confronted my wife about the mismatch, she didn't even blink. She just rolled her eyes and went, "Are you seriously calling me a liar? You're pathetic. Maybe if you had friends, you'd understand what it's like to go out." That was her thing lately, turning it back on me, making me feel like the insecure one. I started second-guessing myself. Am I crazy? Am I imagining this? But then I'd remember the little things. The half-truths, the over-defensiveness, the perfume I could smell on her clothes that wasn't hers. I wasn't crazy. I just didn't have the smoking gun yet. The proof finally landed in my lap, and honestly, I wish it hadn't. One evening, she jumped in the shower after coming home, late from work. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, and for once, she hadn't snatched it up. I'm not proud of this, but my hands were shaking as I picked it up. I just needed to know. The screen lit up with a text preview. "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you." from a number I didn't recognize. My heart stopped. I unlocked her phone. Thank God I knew the passcode, and what I saw, it felt like my chest caved in. Pages and pages of texts with this guy. Pet names. Plans to meet up. Her telling him, "I'll say I'm with the girls again." Him telling her, "Wish you could spend the night with me," instead of going back to him. And then the pictures. Nothing too graphic, but enough. Selfies she'd sent in outfits I never even got to see her in. Smiling in ways she hadn't smiled at me in months. I just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen, feeling like my whole marriage was collapsing in my hands. When she came out of the shower, towel in her hair, humming like nothing was wrong, I knew I couldn't unsee any of it. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. She walked out of the bathroom in her pajamas, kissed me on the cheek like everything was normal, and climbed into bed. Meanwhile, my chest felt like it was going to explode. I barely slept. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying those texts in my head, every line cutting deeper. The pet names, the laughter, the way she lied about me. He's boring, he doesn't notice anything. That one kept me up the most. The next morning, she acted like nothing was wrong, making coffee, scrolling her phone, humming. I watched her like she was a stranger living in my house. Every casual movement just screamed fake to me. For the next few days, I went back and forth in my head. Part of me wanted to explode, slam the phone in front of her and demand answers. The other part wanted to gather more, make sure there was no way she could gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. Because I knew her. She was sharp, and she could twist an argument until I doubted myself. But I wasn't going to let her this time. I decided the next slip-up, the next obvious lie, I'd be ready. I call her out on the spot. And sure enough, it came sooner than I expected. It happened on a Thursday night. She told me she was going to dinner with her coworkers to celebrate a big project. I didn't say a word, just nodded, kissed her goodbye, and watched her walk out in heels I hadn't seen in years. About an hour later, my buddy Mark texted me again. "Man, I don't know if you want to hear this, but she's not at dinner. Just saw her at the Cove again." Same guy. That was it. I wasn't gonna sit at home like a fool anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove downtown, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. Sure enough, I spotted her instantly. At the bar, laughing, touching his arm, leaning in close. Not a single coworker in sight. I walked right up. She froze when she saw me, eyes wide like a deer in headlights. The guy looked confused, then uncomfortable. "Having a good dinner with your coworkers?" I asked, voice shaking but loud enough for them both to hear. She stammered, I can explain." But I cut her off. "Save it. You've been lying for months. I've seen the texts. I know everything." Her face went from shock to rage in seconds. "You went through my phone? Are you kidding me? That's such a violation." That's what she went with. Not sorry. Not it's not what it looks like. She tried to make me the villain. The whole bar went quiet. I swear you could hear a pin drop. She was standing there, arms crossed now, glaring at me like I was embarrassing her. The guy, let's call him Derek, mumbled something about needing to leave and practically bolted, which only made her angrier. She hissed at me, "You're humiliating me. Can't you just wait until we get home?" I laughed. I actually laughed, but it was hollow and shaky. "Humiliating you? You've been sneaking around with him while lying to my face, and I'm the one humiliating you?" She rolled her eyes, and said, "God, you're so dramatic. We were just talking. You always blow everything out of proportion." That line lit me on fire. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the texts I'd screenshotted. Her face went pale, then instantly hardened again. "That's out of context," she snapped. Like I was supposed to be dumb enough to believe there's any innocent context for last night was amazing. Can't wait to do it again. People were staring, whispering. I could feel every eye in the room on us. Finally, I said, "Fine. Let's go home and talk, since you're so worried about appearances." She stormed out ahead of me, heels clacking on the floor, muttering about how I'd ruined her night. I didn't say a word on the drive home. My hands were white-knuckling the steering wheel. She sat there in silence too, scrolling on her phone like she wasn't just caught red-handed. But the second we walked in the door, the dam broke. As soon as we stepped inside, she slammed the door behind her and spun around, glaring at me. "You're insane," she spat. "You think you're the victim here? You're ridiculous." I couldn't take it anymore. "Insane? You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around, flirting, sending texts behind my back, and now you're trying to make me look crazy?" She scoffed and crossed her arms. "Oh, please. You've always been paranoid. You overreact to everything. I was just having some fun. Don't act like I've done something unforgivable." My chest tightened. Fun? Fun? I could barely breathe. Fun? That's what you call betraying me for months? Lying about where you were every single night? Smiling at him the way you haven't smiled at me in years? She rolled her eyes again, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're so dramatic. I'm not even sure why I'm wasting my time explaining myself to you. Maybe if you paid attention, you'd understand." Every word she said felt like a knife. Her lies, her deflections, the way she twisted everything back on me. It was crushing. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I just sank into a chair, feeling the weight of months of deceit pressing down on me. I realized in that moment it wasn't just the cheating. It was the person she had become while doing it. After she stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door, I just sat there. The silence of the apartment felt suffocating. I felt hollow, like the floor had dropped out from under me. Every memory of our marriage, the vacations, the late-night talks, even the stupid arguments that used to feel like love, suddenly felt tainted. I went through a roller coaster in minutes. Anger, disbelief, sadness, shame. Anger at her, at myself for missing the signs, at the universe for letting this happen. Sadness that the person I trusted most could lie so effortlessly. Disbelief that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. And then shame for even thinking I could be enough, for letting her treat me this way. I cried. Not quietly, but like my chest was breaking, like all the pain I'd been stuffing for months finally exploded. I yelled into a pillow, kicked the couch, and felt every ounce of my betrayal. But in the middle of it, there was a strange clarity. I realized I couldn't fix her. I couldn't control her. All I could do was decide what I was going to do with this mess. The next few days were a haze. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her laughing with him, texting him, lying to my face. Couldn't eat. I couldn't focus at work. I kept replaying our marriage in my head, trying to pinpoint where it all went wrong. But the truth was, this wasn't about me. It was about her choices. I started thinking about what I actually wanted. Could I forgive her? Could I ever trust her again? And if I did try, would I just be setting myself up for more heartbreak? Every scenario ended the same way. I'd either feel like a fool for staying or a coward for leaving. But deep down, I knew one thing. My life couldn't revolve around her lies anymore. I had to reclaim myself, even if it meant making the hardest decision of my life. I decided I needed to talk to her again, but this time not to argue. This time to lay it all out. What she did, how it made me feel, and the fact that I couldn't continue living in a marriage built on betrayal. I finally told her to sit down in the living room. She plopped onto the couch like she was bored, scrolling through her phone. I tried to steady my voice. "We need to talk. No yelling, no interruptions. Just listen." She snorted. "Fine, go ahead. Entertain me." I took a deep breath. "I know about the texts. I know about him. I know about everything. And I need you to understand how badly this has hurt me. How much you've broken the trust in this marriage." Her response? She rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, come on. I've made mistakes, yeah, but you're acting like it's the end of the world. People cheat all the time." That was the last straw. My hands were shaking, but I forced the words out. "It's not just the cheating. It's the lying, the sneaking, the way you've gaslighted me into thinking I'm the problem. I can't live like this anymore. I can't." She leaned back, arms crossed, and smirked. "So what, you're leaving me?" Over this? You think you're perfect? I didn't answer immediately. I let the weight of everything sink in. Finally, I said, I'm not perfect. I'm tired. I've loved you for years, but love doesn't fix betrayal. I need to step away, figure out my life without this constant pain. For the first time, she was silent. I could see the shock register, but also that familiar coldness. She wasn't apologetic. She didn't beg. She just looked at me like I was an inconvenience. The next week was surreal. I started packing a few things, moving them into my brother's spare room. Every shirt I folded, every photo I tucked away, felt like cutting a piece of my own heart. She barely looked up from her phone, occasionally muttering snide remarks like, "So dramatic? Moving out over a fling?" I didn't argue. I just focused on myself. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, went for long runs, and tried to reclaim the parts of me I had lost in the marriage. The apartment felt emptier, quieter, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of peace. Emotionally, it was a mess. Some nights, I'd cry thinking about the life we built together. Other nights, I'd get angry, replaying her lies, the casual way she treated me like a fool. But every day, the anger faded just a little, and the clarity grew. I wasn't going to be trapped by her decisions anymore. It was time to start building my own life on my own terms. Sitting alone in my new little space, I had a lot of time to think. The betrayal cut deep, but it also forced me to see things I hadn't admitted before. I realized I'd ignored my gut instincts for too long, convinced myself that love would fix everything, and tolerated small lies that added up into this avalanche. I also saw how manipulative she could be. The constant deflections, the eye rolls, the attempts to make me feel like the bad guy. It hurt like hell, but it taught me something crucial. I couldn't let anyone else define my worth or dictate my happiness. I started journaling, talking to a therapist, leaning on friends. I allowed myself to grieve, to feel betrayed, to be angry. And slowly, I began to accept that moving forward meant fully accepting the reality of what she had done, and that I deserved better. I won't lie, some days it still stings, but I also feel stronger, clearer, and more confident in myself than I have in years. I'm not going to pretend this is easy. Ending or stepping away from a marriage like this leaves scars, and there's a lot of anger and sadness that lingers. But I've learned something vital. Betrayal says far more about the person who cheats than the person who is cheated on. If I could give advice to anyone going through this, it would be, trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't dismiss it. Don't ignore red flags. Small lies pile up into something unmanageable. Prioritize yourself. You can't fix someone else, and you can't sacrifice your sanity for a relationship built on deceit. Seek support. Friends, family, therapy. Don't isolate yourself. Grieve and reflect. Allow yourself to feel everything and learn from it so you don't carry the same patterns forward. I won't lie. It hurt like hell to realize my marriage was over because of her choices. But I also feel a sense of relief and freedom now. I'm reclaiming my life, piece by piece, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm living for me again. If you're in a situation like this, remember you're not weak for walking away. You're strong enough to demand honesty, respect, and love that's mutual. And if someone can't give you that, it's not the end of your life. It's the start of the life you deserve.